guys, are you looking at building a table just like this? Complete with umbrella? Okay, so the umbrella might be a little bit ridiculous, but if you'd like an outside table like this, just keep watching. So guys, since we're building an outside table, I thought it'd be a little fun to do this intro outside. It's a beautiful morning here, and I got my Bloody Mary with me.
I love alcohol.
Love a good Bloody Mary. And I already know I'm going to get a couple comments on that. But we're going to go ahead and start on this table build. I got this old frame that was just laying in my yard. It has kind of a weird design to it, but boy is it beefy. And having a nice metal frame like this would be perfect for an outside table. So obviously you can see it's definitely got its rust spots. And this table isn't good to go as is. So we're definitely going to have to do some maintenance on this table. Not only that, but this board isn't exactly brand new either. This board has obviously been used and abused, and it comes from an old barn site. So not only is it dirty, it's covered in nails, probably screws too. So this is probably going to be a big work in progress. So one of the most annoying things that I have to deal with is all the nails in this wood, especially because I take a lot of time getting all these out. The last thing you want is one of these nail heads, or even one of these giant screws, running through one of your planers or joiners. But we got our drink and all afternoon, so let's get started. So far I've pulled out probably about 1.2 million nails and screws out of wood. And over that time I've used a wide range of different tools to get all these nails out. Here are just some of my favorite ones in use. Of course you gotta use a hammer, crowbar. I got some nail punch outs, screwdriver, and a little tool I got at Harbor Freight. I can't remember what it's called, but this board was just riddled with nails. I'm not sure what this was used for, but it's pretty common to have old boards like this completely full of nails. Alright, so we are finally done getting all those nails out of here. And I think I took out probably about 100 of those little nails. Now, I looked over it really well. I'm really confident that I got all of them out. Unfortunately, I don't have a metal detector, but I know there's a lot of other woodworkers that would definitely recommend getting one, because that's just a great way to double check your work and making sure you got any of those nails out. But again, I'm a professional, so I think I'm good to go. So with all the projects I do, I don't usually do large tabletops like this. I want to use my miter saw to make the first cut, and I realized that the board actually isn't going to fit. It's going to hit that wall, and I'm just struggling a little bit. Of course, the miter saw is attached to the table, so I got to move the whole table. But no problem there, I'm super strong or whatever. But I'm able to cut off the ends where there's a bunch of big cracks and nail holes that I'm just going to get rid of. And then after that, you're just kind of doing the whole woodworking process. I know if you watch my videos, you've probably seen this montage quite a few times. But after I cut my pieces to length, so now I'm just going to start planing it off, and of course, yeah, there's a nail I missed. Well, I guess no one's perfect. That's the only good thing, is that these nails are super small, so I didn't notice any damage to the blade. A lot of times if you hit a big nail, it'll leave a chip in your blade, and it'll create just a little bit of a high spot on your board. Luckily for me, it was such a small nail that it probably didn't cause much damage to the blade. So we got our boards processed, and they should all be squared up and ready to go. So now we just gotta lay out our dowels in here. Alright, how long is this thing? 56 inches. Does 56 divide easily in any?
Oh my god, math.
Alright, so if I do a dowel every 8 inches, we'll have 7 of them on each joint. I think that'll be okay. I mean, I don't know if there's like some formula with how many dowels you should or shouldn't have. So I'm going to go with 7. 7's a lucky number, right? So what we're going to do, mark out every 8 inches then. So of course the reason that we're making these big lines across on both boards, because that way when we pull them apart, we'll know exactly where to drill in the dowel. And then that way when we put them together, they'll line right back up. Nope, we got it off. Kind of like that. The dowel will do the work. So I'm just using a simple cheap dowel jig here. If you're doing a lot of tables like this, you probably want to invest in a biscuit or domino jig. Kind of like this one. And now that we got the dowel holes all in, it's time for the glue up. But not only do we need a lot of glue, we're going to need a lot of clamps. We need a lot of clamps. I actually think I have more. So I don't know about you guys, but I have about 10 to 15 other woodworkers that I follow on YouTube. And the reason that I'm following them is, honestly, is to steal their ideas and methods. I mean, hey, I'm obviously not perfect, but a lot of people have a lot of cool, inspiring ideas. But anyways, the reason I brought that up is because all these other woodworkers, and I mean, you've probably seen the videos, the top 5 things that you need, blah, blah, blah. Although those are interesting videos, I mean, whatever, you just do you. But I will say, almost the #1 thing that everyone always says is, you need clamps. And that one actually is no joke. A lot of the time I do projects, I think that I have enough clamps and I always run out. I could always use more. And I'd say this is probably a good example of it. Alright, we're going to let this dry. I know it looks a little crazy, but man, that's what you gotta do. So we're going to let this dry. Enjoy this beer. Oof. So since I have some time to let that wood glue dry, I'm going to go ahead and prep this table base. So you can see right away this thing is not covered in rust, but it's got rust to where it needs to be removed. And this is definitely not an easy thing to do. A lot of people just tell you to use a wire wheel to get it all off. And that's kind of what I started doing, and it really wasn't doing the best job. I was having a lot of troubles around those bars, especially with the wire wheel. So I ended up actually just grabbing my grinder, and all the flat surfaces I had, I just ground it pretty much down to metal. There was about 3 coats of paint on this thing already. And for those bars, I mean, the best thing I could think of was just using sandpaper as best as I could. And I'm guessing that you guys could probably tell, I am by no means a professional painter. I just picked up a simple can of paint. I think it was about $6. So far my investment in this table is $6. But all I know is just trying to do clean, even strokes while you're spraying this thing out. But one pro tip I did learn is if it's windy out, don't put your camera gear downwind of where you're painting. I mean, some things seem obvious, but I don't know, you gotta learn somehow. But after all that, it turned out pretty good. I ended up using probably about the entire can of paint on that, but all in all, it looks great. Nailed it. Well, it's been about 20 hours, so let's go ahead and crack this bad boy open. So now we're just gonna prep this tabletop. You wanna start by removing the clamps, which is probably pretty obvious. And removing the stands you put it on, which weren't really supposed to stick anyway. But another pro tip I have learned from doing this quite a bit, so when you're gluing these pieces together, don't try and wipe off the glue, just let it drip off. That way when it's all done drying, you just flip it over and then easily can scrape it off with just a putty knife or a chisel. I gotta tell you, it is so much easier just to scrape it off with a chisel than trying to sand it off with your sander. And then next you're just cutting your piece to your final dimensions. You can probably see me not cutting much off. You always want to plan to probably cut off about 1 to 2 inches, just so that you have extra, but I never really had a final dimension. I just had these boards and I just wanted the maximum amount out of them. So I'm just cutting off a little bit on the edge just to square them up. Alright, so now that we're just kind of done with our rough sanding, I just wanted to get everything flat. Again, this is barnwood, so this isn't great quality wood. So we got some nail holes in here that I want to make sure that they get filled up. Because this is going to end up being outside, I don't want any rainwater or any other junk that might collect in those holes. So it's best just to fill them up. So for that, I just went and got some plastic wood. It's just a natural wood filler. Well, not natural. And these things come in all different kinds of colors. I've actually seen people use black wood filler on some pine boards like this, and personally I think that's such a cool look. Unfortunately the shop I went to didn't have black, so I'm just going to use natural, and it's going to best blend into this to where you're not even going to notice these nail holes anymore. And it doesn't look great now, but this stuff will dry, it'll get nice and hard, and we'll be able to sand it off. And now that our wood filler is dry, all we gotta do sand it off. Look at that. So before we start sanding the absolute bejesus out of this table, I'm actually gonna end up just drilling a hole into it. Sounds pretty stupid, right? So since this is an outside patio table, my plan is to put an umbrella in the middle. I do have this crazy looking umbrella here. And since this is a pretty big and bulky table, it'll be pretty much perfect for an anchor for this umbrella. So we're just going to be using some hole saws just to get this cord out. These Milwaukee bits make pretty quick work of a table like this. But when you are done drilling your hole, you do probably want to get a drum sander and just sand it up real quick on the inside. The bits make it pretty rough. And of course, I absolutely hate sharp edges on tables. Not only are they dangerous, but I don't know, I just don't like the look of them, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a round over bit on my router. Now we're just gonna go all the way around the table. Here's a pretty cool close-up shot, and of course we're gonna route out that hole too. So now that we're done drilling our holes and routing out the edges, we get to do what woodworkers voted is the worst part about this job. And that's sanding. But sanding's not too bad. Here's a couple of tricks to help you out along the way. Alright, tip number 1 is obviously get a beer. And then make sure you drink some of it. Next tip is you're going to want to get a good sander. I do have a tool shop sander that you pretty much never see me use. This is what I used when I first started woodworking, and it's garbage. Next, you want to make some pencil marks on your workpiece. Not only is that helping you evenly sand your piece, but also you're not wasting your time over sanding either. Next tip is sanding is loud and annoying, so put in some music. Tip number 5 is finish your beer that you got on tip number 1. Tip number 6 is get another beer. Then all you gotta do is put your sander on autopilot and start sanding. I'm just kidding. But wouldn't that be such a good idea? I mean, hey, $1 million idea right here. If you could somehow make like a Roomba that was a sander that just sanded your tables for you, just like drove back and forth, someone hit me up. I mean, $1 million idea right there. Ugh. But anyways, it looks like I already started staining. I believe the stain I was using was like golden pecan. Since it's outside, I wanted something light, and I think this looks pretty good. Since this is such a big surface, I just ended up using a rag. There's a whole bunch of different tools that you can use to apply stain like this, but for big surfaces, a rag is just probably the easiest, fastest. So after waiting about 24 hours, that's usually about the time I like to wait for my stain to set up, it's time to go ahead and put the protective coating on it. I'm using an outside polyurethane, or starethane I think it's called, something like that. Don't quote me on that. But since I wanted the first layer to be pretty darn heavy, I went ahead and put it in a spray gun. That way I can really apply it on a super kind of thick coat. And then here are some sweet slow-mo shots that I took. I feel like all the cool people are doing it. So while I'm waiting for that urethane to dry, I went ahead and noticed that I want to make a second shelf on the bottom of this table. When I first measured it, I was like, hey, that leftover board is actually going to fit perfectly in that. But of course, after measuring it, I realized I was wrong, and yeah, it didn't fit. So I ended up finding another board, which I really don't like doing because as you can see, there's a drastic color change in that. And when you glue these boards together, they just don't look super similar, and it's just best to use the same board for your whole project. But nonetheless, there's not too much I can do about it. So I grabbed this piece, and yeah, you can see it's not great, big crack in it, and pretty wobbly. So I had to work with it quite a bit. And while I'm fixing this stuff up, you probably noticed this weird orange looking drink I'm drinking. Kind of curious what it is. It's one of my new favorite drinks, so get ready for this. It's just a regular Wisconsin Old Fashioned, which I like mine brandy sweet, which is really the only way you should have one. But after you have that, you go ahead and grab yourself a little apple butter, which I realize doesn't sound great, but all that apple butter is just concentrated applesauce. Yeah, I do realize this doesn't sound great, but go ahead and grab a teaspoon of that, dump it right in your Old Fashioned, and you got yourself an apple butter Old Fashioned. Sounds really weird, but you guys just gotta trust me, it's great. Now we get to install the umbrella. I mean, there's no way you can say it like a badass. Now that should fit perfectly. Wow, look at that. I gotta zoom you back. Not kidding when I say this is a big umbrella. Can you see it? Well, anyways, here's the table, guys. Thanks for watching. This was a lot of fun to make. And hey, if you find any of those table bases, don't just chuck them. You can build some pretty cool stuff out of this. So now we got a place to eat outside and plenty of shade to be out here. So until next time, grab a beer and build something.